Welcome to Inner Landscapes, the podcast where we explore our inner worlds, modern life, ancient wisdom, creativity, healing, and running an alternative business.
Inner landscapes.
Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome back to episode 5 of Inner Landscapes. I can't believe we're on episode 5 already. That's really exciting.
I know, it's amazing. Hello, everyone.
We are going to start in the same way that we always do. So, Martina, how is your inner landscape looking, feeling, um, flowing today?
I think it's feeling and flowing smoothly. As you know, I feel like I'm at the end of a slightly erratic time. We were going to talk about elements on today's podcast, and that kind of changed for us because something else became alive. But I feel like I'm still like tapped into that in terms of like trying to be more like water and like a stream, but a stream somewhere where there's a field. The stream is seemingly moving fast, but it's actually just taking its time and because the surface is flat and it's not rushing anywhere. So that's kind of what I'm trying to embody right now. Yeah, there's like a quiet after the storm rather than before the storm. So it's like a nice Sunday afternoon energy that I'm feeling a bit more, and that's definitely linked to safety and what we're going to talk about today as well.
Nice. That feels like a very intentional inner landscape for this week, which is really lovely.
Yes. What about you? What is your inner landscape looking like or feeling like right now?
My inner landscape is pretty sleepy. Maybe I'm like morphing into some kind of puppy type creature. Like I feel very small and kind of quiet and sleepy, but also like full of lots of nice energy. I went for a lovely walk before we jumped on this call today, and I felt very like springy in my step, which I think also comes along with this kind of puppy type energy, which is really nice because I'm in my second trimester of my pregnancy and
Woo!
trimester. Woo, woo, woo. First trimester was like literally, you know, when you see those old dogs in the park and their legs have completely buckled and you can tell they've got nothing left of their hips and they're drooling a little bit and they're really grey and like that was me in my first trimester. And now second trimester I'm like stepping into this new, yeah, kind of energetic flow that's really nice but also quite chill but playful. So yeah, that's my inner landscape of right now.
I love that. That's hilarious, the analogy of the dog. This is like some kind of Benjamin Button-esque transformation for you.
Yeah, totally. And that's so funny, isn't it? Because pregnancy is a thing of new life, but obviously for the person that's building the life, the beginning of it literally just, I mean, it's obviously different for everybody, but for me, it completely knocked any, not even just energy, but like playfulness. I just was
Mm,
so drained of everything.
yeah.
It definitely felt like aging very, very quickly. Um,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, you have this miraculous like reawakening when things just become a little bit more easy for your
Hmm.
body.
Yeah, it's similar. Like your body is working all the time at creating this human. So it's almost like similar to what happens in a cycle when you have the bleed and everything. And it
I'm
was,
going to interrupt you for a second and
yeah.
say, can you speak more to that? Because when we started talking about cycle work stuff, this was not anything that I was tuned into. And I'm sure that for some of our listeners, it's a similar kind of thing. So, do you
Hmm.
want to just talk us a little bit through that cycle before we move on?
So basically, when you are bleeding, you are shedding the lining of the womb, and that's like a lot of work for your body. As you move through the cycle, hormones change, and then you have the bleed, and your body is working all the time, and then you come out of it, and there's that spring energy, and it's to me that's very similar to like the period of gestation when the baby is being literally created in your body energetically and hormonally and biologically. All the energy, all the efforts, all the work is going into that, and then living more in sync with that baby. So I don't know whether that's the right analogy, but yeah, I'm not like a pregnancy expert, but in terms of like the journey, intuitively, that's how it feels to me.
Yeah, and that definitely resonates,
So,
I think, with my experience as well. I love as well that you
mm.
said like you start living more
Sync with the
in,
baby, yeah,
yeah,
in
because also
harmony.
as you start to feel them more, and I guess the energy levels change with that as well, because you're suddenly so much more present to
Mm.
them being there. Whereas for the first bit, you're just, bloated, tired.
Yeah.
Then when you start to feel stuff, you're like, okay, cool, look at us, we're going for a walk together, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Again, almost like you're on a journey of like bringing awareness to the experience of your pregnancy and the changes and the growth of this human. Whereas when you work with the cycle, you bleed because you didn't have a baby, but your body is still working. So, yeah, I feel like there's just this beautiful analogy to how, by bringing awareness, you can then grow with the process in
Yeah.
both cases. Yeah.
And how enlightening, I guess, it is to live with your body in this way.
Hmm.
Since knowing you and having more of these kinds of conversations, I feel really liberated now that I am more attuned to everything that is happening, how it
Hmm.
makes me feel at different stages of the cycle, and how individual it is to me, because all of us are completely different in how we experience. Like, obviously, there's mirrors, um,
Mm.
but none of us experience our bodies in the same way. Let's have, before we get into the nitty-gritty of today's episode, moment to just kind of connect our listeners and to also think about just opening up this space for conversation for all of us. So, if you are somewhere where you're able to kind of like really sit back and chill for a second and close your eyes, I invite you to do that now. But if you're walking along, then also just listen and let whatever images float into your mind as we go through a very short little visualization. So, to start off with, we'll just start tuning in a little bit more to our breath and just paying attention to how the breath feels for you today. If it's long or short, deep or shallow, and where in your body your breath wants to go. So, if it's kind of heading into the top of your chest and your shoulders, or maybe into your belly, maybe you feel it in your throat, or even somewhere else entirely in your body. Just a second to hone into that breath. And then on the next inhale, I want you to, in your mind's eye, let your breath carry you into a kind of corridor space. And in this corridor space, you're going to feel your breath in the same way. So just notice how maybe now the air is moving past you in the same way, mirroring your breath. And you're just going to let that feeling of the breath carry you along this corridor. And as it does, you're going to notice that on either wall in the corridor, there's these pictures. And all of these pictures are of all of the homes that you have lived in or created throughout your lifetime. And they might be moving, you might see people in there, or the images might just be of specific rooms or spaces in your homes that felt really inviting and warm for you. And as you walk along, these pictures are just going to keep shape shifting and changing. Maybe they're going to dissolve off of the walls as you walk past them and just blow away in the breath behind you. And then as you get to the end of the corridor, you're going to approach a door. And when you put your hand on the handle of the door, you find that it's locked. But if you check in your pocket, there's a little key. And when you take that key out of your pocket, you can put it into the door and you find it fits perfectly. So you just unlock the door, push down the handle, and the door opens for you in front of you. And you're walking now into your home. And for a second, I just want you to look around this space and just notice everything that makes up home for you. It could be physical objects or colors, maybe how the light falls in the room, maybe there's people in there. And just let yourself wander around this space for a second. And as you wander, notice what feels alive in your body. So, how is your heart beating in this space that is home? How does your breath move here? How do you step in this space? What's the energy like? What can you smell? What can you hear? And maybe take yourself to one space in this place that feels home. And you're just going to rest your hand against an object here. It could be a wall, a picture, a book, your bed, anything. And just put your hand against that object for a second. And I just want you to feel the energy of home pulsing through the palm of your hand and entering your body. And all the love that you feel here, all the memories that are seeped into this place. And then you're just going to, again, shift the energy now. So rather than letting it come into your hand, I want you to imagine a light drawing from your heart space, along your arm, through your palm, and into that object that you're touching. And just let your home know how grateful you are for it and how much love you feel in this place. Take a second to give that love back to your home. And then when you're ready, you're going to take your hand off of that object and you're going to repeat after me into this space. Thank you for all of the safety that you have provided. Thank you for all of the love that I feel here. Thank you for everything that is yet to come in my home. And then you're going to go back through that door where you came in. You're going to take the key back out of your pocket and lock the door again, keeping your home safe. But you can come back here whenever you need to. And then you're just going to turn and walk back along that corridor. And again, you're going to feel this breath, this breeze coming along with you. And as you walk along the corridor, you see the pictures swirling again. And you see all of these different memories of all of the different types of home you've had. And then the breath just falls back in tune with your physical body where you are right now. Back into this moment. Back into your breath. And if you had your eyes closed and you're sitting down, I invite you to give your fingers and your toes a little wiggle and just gently open your eyes. Or if you were walking along, then just take a second now to kind of let that experience float from your head and just tune back into mine and Martina's voice for the rest of the episode. So, if you didn't guess already, today we're going to be thinking about home. A lot of us think that home is where you grew up, or it's your childhood home, or something like that. So, what does home mean to you?
That is a loaded question, isn't it?
And we wrote it ourselves. We set ourselves up for this.
It means so many different things. I feel like, it's changed throughout my life. And yes, like the original sort of definition as you grow up is, where your parents are. And I know I'm speaking from a place of privilege, having had two parents, having had a safe container in that sense. That's not lost on me, but also that's what shaped my idea of home. There's always been people, so there's like closeness, people, food, that kind of warmth. Because I grew up in a house that had, I think that's the right expression, like revolving door, in the sense that people would just turn up and they would bring food and they would bring alcohol, which as a child, I think my parents were young parents, so they were still party people when they had me. Yeah, that also, like, party was also home and was also safety. And I guess as I grew older, I was a bit like, oh, why is this uncle getting drunk again? But it still felt like familiar and safe and homely because everyone was just joyful and funny. And there was no like divide of generations in the sense that it was very intergenerational, like drawing each other in to whatever we were doing. So if they were eating, we would be there, the kids would be there, and if the kids were playing, the adults would get involved and play with us. So on another level, like another strand of it is a sense of safety within, and that's obviously much, much more nuanced and layered and comes with loads of different external inputs and internal workings out of what it means to feel safe.
Now, for me, I think also in the way that you said the feeling of home changes as you grow up. For me, home, I think also always very much was my parents rather than a place because my parents moved a lot. So the longest I've ever lived in one place is for 3 years. And I always had this thing that home was something that was mobile, I guess, because of that. So my all of my family were very, very good at like packing stuff up and moving to the next place and settling into a building and making a
Mhm.
building feel like home. But I definitely don't have that thing of home is my family house where I grew up. And I didn't really fully connect with this, I don't think, until like a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, where I did my healing journey that I've talked about before with Charisse Bishram. And she made me realize that I kind of treated myself like a suitcase. Like I was always ready to pack up my things and move on to the next place because that had been the pattern of my life always. I really believe, like you said, home is community and it's within you. It's not bricks or a building. And my dad passed away
Mhm.
12 years ago. So I've also had
Mm.
that shift of like home went from being two
Mm.
parents to one. So yeah, it's like a very fluid concept, I think, in my head that I'm starting to make more material.
Mhm.
And I guess I just completely didn't observe the topic for a very, very long time because I wasn't ready yet to acknowledge that these were the patterns. And now that I
Yes.
have, like you said, this extra feeling of safety and I don't have to move again and I don't have to pack up again anytime soon. So I'm learning to like nestle
Mm.
into the safe version of what home is as well.
It's fascinating how all these influences throughout your life has shaped your concept of home, and it's like it's still being shaped, it's still on its way, and maybe it will never stop being shaped. Like you continuously add to it, extract from it, and then one day you're like, oh, okay, this is what home was throughout my life. There's like this tapestry of different images of what it was, I guess.
Yeah, I love that, like little swatches of all of the different homes and what each one represented. Do you
Yeah.
know the term forever home? People talk about this all the time at the moment. Like, how are you gonna buy?
No.
Are you buying your forever home now? Are you building your forever home? Is this gonna be your
Yeah,
forever
what's
home?
that? What is that
Exactly.
BS? Sorry.
So it's if you're like going into a space where you plan to be for the rest of your life, and
Hmm.
this concept to me is so foreign and bizarre because obviously me and Shiga have been renovating our house for a long time, for years, and like my brother said to me, well, you're putting all of this time and money and effort into it. This must be your forever home. And I was like, I literally never, that didn't cross my mind for a second that that's even a concept that would exist
Hmm.
within my life. I feel like this swatch on the tapestry is coming up where perhaps that kind of concept is more understandable or something. I don't believe in forever anything, if I'm really honest. I don't believe in forever homes, relationships, safety, stability, like everything is, and I don't mean that in a negative way.
Hmm.
I just accept that everything is changing constantly. And there are all
Hmm.
of these external influences that cannot guarantee that things are gonna stay the same. And how boring would life be if they
Yeah,
did stay the same forever?
100%. But
But I
also, what is forever? We're only just passing through, you
Yeah.
know?
But I think obviously me and my brother grew up together with this same movement and this same, I guess, instability in some ways of what home was. So for
Hmm.
him, this concept, I think, is really inviting and comforting, perhaps.
That's a great conversation starter and like a great chat to have, yeah, with your sibling as well.
Yeah. So we've
Mm.
kind of touched on this idea of how family has shaped our understanding of home.
Yes.
What about surroundings when you were growing up, and how much has later life shaped your idea of home as well?
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on the fact that similarly to you, for the first 7 years of my life, I moved a lot with my parents. We moved like 8 times in the 7 years. And then my grandma passed away, so we moved in with my granddad, and that was my home. So when I think of home as a physical place, I had a home for 10 years of my life. Or about 11, because I moved out of there when I was about 18. And that's the one that, as a physical place, that's my kind of, that's the archetype of home. But it's interesting how easy it was to, after I left that place, to then 2 years later leave the country, leave my family, and create a new home in the UK, which ever since, for the past 20 years, in a physical sense, have just been temporary homes. However, the way I have sort of been able to do this, still retain a sense of safety, was that I like to think that, I don't know if it's a direct quote, but like sort of bloom wherever I'm planted. So I go to a place, I make it my home, my sanctuary. For example, even when I travel, and that's why I can travel solo so well, because I go somewhere for 2 weeks and that's my home. Like I make it nice, I put incense, I decorate it. Like I have some things from home that make it homely, create my altar, have my crystals, whatever, like have my books, my notebook. So in a way, if the home is something that you carry within you or with you, it's that thing of wherever you go, there is home. Being an immigrant and moving around a lot within the same city, that's massively influenced how I perceive home, what it can be and what it isn't for me, because of economic reasons as well, but also some of it is choice, that I've made choices where I didn't want to tie myself to a physical place because I wanted different types of freedoms. And kind of all that I get, I'm realizing as well that the kind of fundamental need that I have is that of safety. I mean, I think we all have that need. It's just whether we, attune to it or not. That sort of determines how our lives go at any given moment. And it's like it can fluctuate, but at the moment for me, that's actually linked more to a physical place than it has been before.
Yeah, you
So
just made me
yeah.
think of the Worcestershire quote, no one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark, I think
Yeah,
is
I love
the
that.
thing. Obviously, she's talking about having to leave home and like becoming a refugee, which
Mm,
is very different to our experiences. So Martina is from Poland and moved to London and is looking to move again to new countries. And I'm from the south of England and moved to Slovenia. But we both moved out of like a place of choice rather than
mm.
necessity.
Yeah.
But also, like you said, because in your instance, it gave you freedoms that you didn't have when you were at home, perhaps. And I don't know if you mean that in terms of work situations or.
No, I mean more like, for example, I didn't want to work in a corporate job because I am a creative. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to meet English speakers and people from all over the world and different cultures. And so I could, in a way, like that rootedness or uprooting myself has been a choice. So I can't say, all of it is like economic in the sense of, oh, I'm an immigrant, so therefore it's always been harder for me to, buy a house in the UK, for example, because I could have done that. Like if I had made a plan to do it.
Mhm.
Um,
The plan, the one that we start
the
when we're
plan.
17 and start
Yeah,
saving to buy a house
yeah,
and things like that. And this is
exactly.
an argument I had with my brother once as well, because he was saying everybody can afford a house if they start saving when they're 17 and blah blah blah. And I was like, yeah, but who were you when you were 17? You definitely weren't saving. I wasn't saving. We were just like doing our thing, earning our money, living our lives day to day, getting through.
When I think of home as well, there is some resentment come up for me. Like when you look at the Maslow's needs and the pyramid, like the safety is the second one after the physical needs. So, and with safety, the home and the space, physical space is linked, right? This is basic. It's the basics. And it shouldn't come at a price of not enjoying your life, not living freely. Like, I feel in a sense, the concept of home had to be reshaped for me, because otherwise I would have just felt like I'm on the outskirts of society in a way, because I didn't have an opportunity to have a house or to have a flat, and I didn't create it for myself. And I'm not saying that in a self-blaming way. I'm just saying there's always a price you have to pay for either or. So a part of frustration for me is like I disagree with that on like a fundamental level. Like we should all have a safe place to land, and that shouldn't be something that needs to be earned. And I don't mean that in a financial sense, but like something that you need to
Be deserving of. Like, okay,
deserving of.
you're
It's a
this
given. Yeah.
specific group of people, and so you can access a
Yeah.
safe home. Yeah.
Now, I was going to say, obviously, I'm speaking from a perspective of someone who is still living in a Western society where I'm safe, I'm not in a war-torn country. So, let alone when I think about all these other people, I'm like, that is, there's rising in me in a way. Because yeah, it's so basic, it's so fundamental.
This is such a hard conversation to talk about, actually, in
Yeah.
general at the moment, isn't it, with everything that's happening
Yeah.
in Ukraine and in Gaza and in lots of
Yeah.
other parts of the world as well. I mean, also, I think in America, there's so much like disruption at the moment in terms of what feels safe and doesn't feel safe, even though, I don't know, we think of it as being a safe, quote unquote,
Oh, yeah.
a part of the world or whatever. But yeah, safety and home should be basic fundamental rights that every single person on the planet is able to have. And of course, it's
Access.
really
Mm.
devastating and frustrating and infuriating to see at the moment that, I mean, not at the moment, that we just haven't managed to get to a place where that exists equally. The way that we see these things now and the way we have these conversations, this also then shapes the way you feel about home and safety.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that it definitely makes me very grateful every single time I prepare a meal, or there's a storm outside and I hear it from my window and I'm in a
Mm.
flat where
Mm.
nothing is going to fall apart. I feel very, very grateful more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's the other part of that, which is the pure rage, like you said,
Mm.
at the fact that this is not the same for everybody. And I was also just thinking about this thing of when you move country, again, coming back to like our examples of the fact that we chose to go to other places, how that also really then shapes what home means to you later. Because I had always moved quite a lot, I was very bad at actually keeping connection with my community. And I think this started
Mm.
in school because I also moved school 3 times as a teenager. So the first
Wow.
time I left, my friends were absolutely amazing at kind of keeping in contact with me and sending me letters and stuff like this. Plus, it was the beginning of Facebook, not to
Mm-hmm.
not to age us, but and then I was at school for 1 year, and then I moved to another school where I was for a year, and then I had a gap year where I was working in a pub, and then I went to London to study for university. So there was a few years where I had like very short but quite meaningful relationships with people. And every time I moved on to the next thing, I kind of abandoned those relationships because I didn't know how to have the conversation about why I was going, where I was going, or what was going to be like our relationship after this. And moving to Slovenia, the first few years I was here, I did the complete opposite of what my pattern had been before. So instead of abandoning my relationships, I tried much harder to maintain them, but as an
Mm.
act of resistance against making new relationships and building a new community in my new home. So I was like, well, I have my friends. I've spent the last 8 years in London forming these friendships, this community. This is my home on top of my family. And so I don't need to make new friends here. I'll just make more of an effort to be in contact with my old ones. But then because I wasn't building community here in Slovenia, I also felt very unhappy and my mental health like massively dipped. And so I
Mm.
then avoided my community at home because I didn't want to tell them that I was unhappy. So I'd got stuck in this like really
Cycle.
funky cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing because each time it gives you a mirror of what you're doing and how you're responding, and it invites you to ask, why am I behaving in this way? I'm really grateful for all of those moves because they gave me all of these opportunities to see the mirrors that were around me, to reflect, to think about what was making me happy or unhappy or in the middle, and what was important and what I really value as this thing that is home, that is community, that is safety, that is routines, that is places that feel special to you and make you feel really on a vibrational level very chill.
Mm.
For me, the
Mm.
idea of being in one place and that being where all of your foundations have continued to layer up and you've formed into the person that you are is completely bizarre. Yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with that, but it's just my kind of observation about when you move away from the family home, how many opportunities there are to redefine safety, home, community,
Yes.
and yourself.
I feel what you're describing is like it's like a kaleidoscope almost of like
Mm.
connections and perspectives, feeds into your creativity and just expands you constantly as a human being. And that's like the juicy stuff about life.
And now I'm starting to think as well about I was a teacher for 5 years. School also really felt like a home to me when I was a
Mm,
student and also when I was a teacher. That
mhm.
intense community of the people that you're with every single day.
Interesting. I guess you were a teacher, so you were part of the other side of the community. For example, high school definitely didn't feel like home. I felt very disconnected from it. But I remember feeling home in my primary school, but that's because randomly my grandparents were teachers, so we had a flat that was connected to the school building. So I lived in my school, basically, in my primary school.
Cool. So the
Mm.
physical part of school was also the like directly connected to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
building that was your
Yeah.
home.
And that's why it felt so safe. My family was just like, well, 2 floors up.
And I actually have two nephews here in Maribor that are both going to nursery in September. And there's a lot of feels around this in terms of are they going to settle in? Is it going to be okay?
Mm.
And also this moment where you move away from the family home into these outside spaces where community and safety also exists or doesn't in different varying levels. We picked a big topic, my
Oh my
friend.
God, yeah. So we were talking about safety within as well. Shall we touch upon that?
What did you kind of want to talk about in terms of nervous system?
Well, I was just thinking that in terms of like how the nervous system reads the environment, like the bodily sensations will tell you what feels like a home and what doesn't. And if only you give yourself the conditions or the tools to listen to it. And obviously that comes with its own set of tasks or sort of work that you need to do in order to be able to hear it. But you
And
know,
maybe you could tell us what that looks like for you. So when your nervous system feels at home, how does that present for
mm.
you?
It's very, I would say, subtle in a sense. It's like the subtle shifts of, for example, I can definitely tell the difference between being in places where my family is and how, for me, it manifests through like a heavy feeling in my stomach. But like when I mean heavy, it's kind of like a drop, like everything that I've been holding kind of like in my head, in my chest, like this tension just drops. And when I'm holding that tension, that's usually when I'm in environments, sometimes even in my London homes, where I have to be on high alert because there's other people who are not family. So therefore, they're not home. So it's almost like having an intruder in your
Hmm.
own home. And then it's like separating, okay, how can I still retain that safety, that heavy grounded feeling? Maybe heavy is the wrong word, but it's kind of like a drop of something, like the thoughts and the tension that has built up just dissolves.
I'm imagining it like a weighted blanket. It's a soothing heaviness.
Yeah, it's a soothing heaviness. Yeah. I did this thing the other day in a somatic class where the teacher said, "Oh, you could put a bolster on top of your body." And I was like, "Yes, please." And I was like, "I don't do this enough. Put something heavy or like weighted on my body." But that's exactly the feeling. And
Mm.
then in terms of, yeah, just observing, and it's like a mixture of things because it's the external stimuli and then internal stimuli and being able to distinguish between the two. Again, that comes with everything that we've talked about in the previous episodes, like the mindfulness and the awareness and tuning into the body, which only comes when you slow down. And through that, you can create safety. But sometimes the only way to slow down is to have safety in the first place. So it's like a double-edged sword in a way, because it's almost like you have to pick where you stand and then work your way around it. So, like when you work with the nervous system and move, like we're constantly moving through the rest and digest, fight or flight, and freeze. So when you move through these three stages, sometimes throughout the day, sometimes throughout the hour, it's almost like choosing, if you notice what triggers each or what moves you in between, it's also noticing that. And that could be activities. It doesn't necessarily have to be, I mean, it will be activities with your body, but like doing things with your hands or talking to a friend or and I think that also then helps with understanding where you are in terms of like feeling safe within and in the external environment when it comes in the context of home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And what you said at the beginning, that when you feel at home, it's quite a subtle thing to try to pinpoint. And I
Hmm.
think that this actually counts for a lot of things where we feel that the sympathetic nervous system is activated. It's easier to notice when we've gone into fight, flight, or freeze. It's just louder in lots of ways. Whereas when you're
Hmm.
in your parasympathetic and you're in your rest or digest, you are at ease and so you're not hyper alert. But then, having said that, if we live in a lot of stress or tension or confrontation, or then we also get very used to living in our sympathetic nervous system. And so
Hmm.
we then also become a bit numb to all of these triggers and sensations that we're experiencing in our body. And then the rest of your adult life is kind of perhaps about noticing when you've switched into that fight, flight, freeze and learning where
Mm.
to create that feeling of home within yourself. Like you said, you might not be living at home with your family. Your home could be a safe place, but it might not be. Work might feel like home, but work can also feel like being in a really confrontational, horrible environment
Mm.
sometimes. Maybe let's close the episode with having a think about some ways that we can create that feeling of home and soothe our nervous system. I think it comes down to stuff like we talked about in the last episode, your somatic practice that you did at the beginning. So,
Mm.
just to remind listeners, that's putting your right hand over your heart and
Yeah.
your left hand then onto your other arm and hugging yourself for a second, not for a literal second, taking a moment to
Yeah.
just feel that sensation of being held and your heartbeat. Somatic exercises like this are really good for moving us into the parasympathetic. Coloring in is
Hmm.
another one that is really, really wonderful for taking yourself from a place of overthinking and feeling fight, flight, freezy. And it releases endorphins and serotonin. So you're relaxing your system by coloring in. Humming and creating that
Mm.
vibration in your chest is another one. And I
Hmm.
think it's when we start to think about our body as a physical place that is also a home that we are also building and constructing, and how we influence that environment, it makes it easier to move into that place of safety within your physical body of your home.
Yes. It's so easy to just move through life without acknowledging that you're moving inside of this vessel and not really like utilizing it as well. I was gonna say just connecting with your inner child, and that could
Mm.
be through coloring. That could also be something that I have been doing as I'm, in transition or in like the messy middle of finding that safety, the external home right now. Just like talking to my inner child and writing letters to her. It's all about, but sometimes it could be just once you start writing letters, you get into a habit of actually speaking like this to yourself in your head as well. So you would like, I mean, usually it comes from starting from some kind of a wound that is linked to a feeling of lack of safety. So you would say, I'm sorry that you couldn't feel safe because of this, but right now I am here for you, and it's okay that you have all these big feelings about it, but I am here for you. And I don't really have like a template, but I kind of go very free flow with it, with whatever's alive that has activated that wounded inner child.
And
And
maybe let's just
mm,
pause there for a second for also listeners that have never thought about their inner child before. Like, just kind of talk us through that a little bit. What is your inner child, and why do you think it's important to talk to them?
yeah, so just very briefly, an inner child is a part of you that is that 5-year-old or 4-year-old that maybe at some point didn't have their needs seen, heard, validated. And it could be something very subtle. I mean, a lot of this comes either through some sort of healing modalities of like traditional talk therapy that you do figure out like, okay, there was something that happened when I was one, two, three, four, five that's affected the way I show up in the world and the way I ask for what I need. And obviously links to the needing and how we need safety. So then if you didn't get the safety to be who you were with all your big feelings, then ultimately as an adult, you will struggle to express what you need, including your need for safety. And that's why working with your inner child is like absolutely fundamental. And I wish more people knew about this. It's a part of you. You know, we all have different parts to us, and inner child is one of them. And someone told me this, or I read it somewhere maybe, that if you're in a conflict with someone, or if you, yeah, in a conflict and not being able to understand someone you're sitting across the table from, just imagine them as a 5-year-old, and that immediately like softens the way you would relate to them, because each of us is walking around externalizing that 5-year-old version of ourselves.
And in general, when we're triggered in life by different things, especially by like small everyday things, I'm not
Mm.
talking about kind of if you've experienced trauma and you're triggered in this way, but a lot of the time when we are triggered by things generally in the day to day, it's linking also to our inner child. The reaction that we might have that takes us into fight, flight, or freeze is also often linked to this very young version of ourselves that, for whatever reason, has been made to feel vulnerable in a particular
Yeah,
situation. So, I think it's also a really important thing to think about as you go through your day. If you find something triggering, just to question where is that coming from? And you don't
mm.
have to like write a letter to your inner child about it, but just think,
Maybe not writing a letter, that's like more advanced, but just saying, I'm here for you, you are safe,
yeah,
that's it. And I say safety because safety is such a difficult word. So in the work that I do, I say I can't guarantee safety like for someone else, but I feel like when you move through things like as an individual within your own kind of container, you can give yourself safety. I can't give you safety, so no one can actually give you safety. Like I feel quite strongly about this, but if it's just you can reassure yourself because that's what you would have essentially wanted from a parental figure. And at some point you didn't get that. So you like reparenting yourself. And this way you are becoming a home for you. And it can come with a lot of emotions of like disappointment and all sorts. But once you truly like tap into this and start embodying it and understanding it on like a cellular and energetic level, it can really be a life changer.
yeah. The piece around saying, telling yourself you are safe
Mm.
obviously might be difficult depending on whatever your situation is, but speaking to your inner child, things like this. And I've said this before about saying to myself at the end of my stretching, or perhaps at the end of meditation, or even at the end of a creative practice, I often tell myself, thank you for being you today and every day. I'm proud of you for being you today and every day, and I love you for being you today and every day. And when
Hmm.
I started saying things like this, it felt really silly. But then the more you do it, the more I have this subtle feeling of home that you talked about before.
Mm.
And also with that, phrases like these that you say to yourself, which are not actually for you, but are for your inner child and for your current version of yourself and every iteration of yourself that existed
Hmm.
before, it can feel like a really funny thing to do, especially if you have trouble appreciating and loving yourself. But if you have trouble doing that, again, it's probably something linked to before. And so your inner child needs to hear it more than ever.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
even if it feels really, really bizarre, it's definitely worth trying for a little while, just those simple phrases.
Yeah.
And just that connecting with little me, I think you said, which is
Yeah,
really
little me.
nice.
Yeah, I agree. There's one last thing that I wanted to add actually. Something very simple that's been helping me through like the feeling of lack of safety is putting hands on my body. I would try to put it on my heart, on like my chest, on my belly, try and connect it with the chakras. So, like I would even put it like close to my throat so then I know like this is I'm here, like I can express I'm alive, and then
Mm.
put it on my heart, which is, yeah, I'm definitely alive, and then put it on my belly, like I'm in my power. I'm connected to my womb and my femininity and, just my life force energy. But I also just anywhere, because the day when I don't do that, I know I'm disconnected. Yeah, it's very disembodying almost to go a day without somehow making physical contact with yourself. That's what I'm learning. And it's those little things that then the compound effect is that yes, your kind of outer safety can be shaken, but you're constantly building on that inner safety and that inner home. And there comes a moment when, things don't affect you that much anymore.
Yeah, totally. Because I would say that up until a few years ago, I placed all my feeling of safety and home in others.
Mm,
That's like, I'm really grateful for all of those people, and that's beautiful that I have those relationships that make me feel home. But
hmm
I would completely agree that once I then started applying that same, oh, applying is such a horrible word in this context. Once I started, like you said, kind of reparenting myself and really thinking about my internal home, things really, yeah, don't affect me in the same way that they used to.
Mm,
We talked before as well in visualizations about having golden roots extending from your feet and connecting you to the
hmm
earth. It's that thing of I've got myself.
hmm
I also have my community. I also have places that make me feel grounded and safe. But when you take the time to notice where you are letting yourself be in the rest and digest, where you're talking to yourself lovingly or
mm,
critically, where you are feeling your aliveness and your body, then you are in a whole new level of home.
hmm
I mean, you and I haven't talked about this before, but people talk about moving into your higher self. And I think
mm.
that when you are developing this kind of connection with yourself, that's also helping you move up to your higher self and your higher
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah, 100%. This is lovely to end this on a high note, but I wanted to say something on the topic of what you said, making homes out of other human beings, like Warsan, is that how you
Shire.
pronounce
Yeah, yeah,
Shire?
water Shire.
That's one of her quotes, you can't make homes out of human beings.
Mm.
And that, like, when I read all of her poetry back in the day, like, that was one of the lines that really stood out for me because that's what I also used to do throughout my 20s and some of my 30s. And that was very hard to unlearn. And it all came from the wounded inner child, like seeking external confirmation that I am worthy of safety, of everything. So, yeah, it's great to not be that anymore, but it's always a work in progress, I feel.
Yes, yeah, life is, isn't it? It's a long old journey.
Mm.
Um, okay, amazing. Then I think we're going to wrap it up here, and we're going to leave our listeners with a question that I think me and Martina are also going to take away after this episode because that's just opened up so many different portals.
Yeah.
But we would like to invite you to have a think about how do you cultivate a home within. So me and Martina talked through some of the things that we do, the lessons that we've learned, the changes that we've experienced, and we just invite you to take yourself on that journey as well. So the question is, how do you cultivate a home within? And we'll pop that into the show notes as well, so you've got it there. And if you want to share any of your thoughts, feelings, anything that comes up from that question, you've also got both of our details in the show notes, and you're very, very welcome to get in touch with us.
Thank you, Alice. And thank you, everyone, for listening to us going on tangents a little bit. I hope you enjoyed it.
Big love, guys, and see you for our next episode, which will be episode 6, right?
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, woohoo!
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Inner Landscapes. If you enjoyed it, give us a like or subscribe. This helps others find the podcast and expands the community space. If you know someone that would benefit from listening, send them the link to the episode. Building a community takes these kinds of small, loving actions, and we appreciate your support. If you've got any questions or want to get in touch, find us on Instagram. Alice is at creative_T_breaks, and I am at the kind space. Thanks again, and have a lovely rest of your day or night.